Serving North Tonawanda, Lackawanna, and Cheektowaga. Power 96.5 FM, WFO, Amherst, Buffalo.
For the next hour, you will be listening to Living Now with L. Nathan Hare. The phone lines are now open at 837-1112, and we encourage your questions and comments. Now, without further ado, here's your host, L. Nathan Hare.
All right, here we go. Living Now, Living Right Now. This is L. Nathan Hare, your host here for this next hour at WFO 1080 AM on your, not 1080, 96.5 FM. On your dial from 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock this morning. Our principal sponsor, of course, the Community Action Organization of Western New York, still fighting the war on poverty, now in our 52nd year. This is L. Nathan here, your host here. I want to welcome you, for all of you again to this hour of insight, introspection, and interpretation of facts, events, and trends affecting you right here and right now in Buffalo and Western New York community, and in fact, connecting to communities all across the country. Each month, we focus on things we think will be of interest to you, which will serve to interest you and will serve to motivate you. I'm having gas for some reason. It serves to motivate you. To connect up to the broader issues that affect our communities here in Western New York. As the Spirit moves us, we'll break into our regular format to discuss timely issues and circumstances that we just can't responsibly avoid. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be having a conversation with Dr. Umar Johnson, who is a school psychologist, and he is author of the book Psychoacademic Holocaust. And I think we got him on, right? Dr. Johnson, are you there?
Yes, sir. Good morning, my brother.
All right, Dr. Umar Johnson. He is a school psychologist, author of the book Psychoacademic Holocaust. I got that title right?
Yes, you do.
Okay. He's been championing the effort to get parents and responsible officials to recognize and resist what he refers to as the war against black boys. He has dedicated his career in fighting the psychoacademic war on the side of African American boys, and uses his experience to educate parents on how they can take charge of their children's education. He urges the community to take a stand to change the disproportionate graduation rates of African American students, especially black male students who have the lowest graduation rates in the country. Dr. Johnson, when I was looking at your text, Psychoacademic War, that refers to a war being waged by the public education system against young children and children of African ancestry in the United States, particularly African boys, what exactly do you mean by that phraseology, the psychoacademic war?
Yes, sir. In conversation, I generally refer to it, as you stated, as the psychoacademic war. In reality, as the book is titled, it's really a psychoacademic holocaust. When you talk about a war implies that there's two sides engaged in a struggle. A holocaust implies that there's only one side engaged in the struggle, and the other side, unfortunately, has been victimized because it doesn't recognize that, in fact, there is a war taking place against it. So because we're not fighting back, it becomes a holocaust and not a war. But there's 6 stages in this war against black children, boys in particular. Miseducation, stage 1, they deliberately miseducate black boys. Special education, stage 2, they deliberately misdiagnose on purpose black boys with such glow-in-the-dark, cannot be proven disorders as reading disabilities and math disabilities and ADHD and conduct disorder, which takes us to stage 3, debilitating psychiatric medication. Now the Ritalin comes in, the Adderall, the Concerta, the Cyclert, the Metadate, takes us to stage 5, juvenile detention and incarceration. That's when the drugs has fried the young man's mind so much he's not able to function anymore. So now they send him to the juvenile detention center, and then that takes us to stage 5, which is psychological frustration and alienation. This is when he becomes the so-called thug, the angry black male, and then that takes us to stage 6, premature extermination at the hands of another black male, also suffering the debilitating effects of the psychoacademic Holocaust.
That is just so depressing to hear.
But the thing is, let me tell you what's so depressing about it. Not that it's happening, but because the African American community has the financial and intellectual wherewithal to reverse this problem, eliminate it completely on its own. We are a $1 trillion economy. In 2016, we spent $2 billion on Air Jordan, $600 million on McDonald's, $9 billion on Perm and Weave. In 2016, Black America purchased twice the amount of Mercedes-Benzes as white America, although white America has more than twice the amount of wealth as black folk. So we clearly could solve this problem on our own, but the truth of the matter is the Department of Education don't care much about black children, but neither do black people.
And you know, Dr. Johnson, that is so profoundly insightful. We do a lot of discussion about these kinds of issues on this program. And one of the things that I just want our audience to just wrap your mind around this reality. African American people as a whole have a gross domestic product. You know, in other words, you add up all savings and income and real estate and all that stuff that belongs to African people together. It comes to $1.7 trillion. Now, I don't know how many people get their minds wrapped around trillions, right? But trillions is a lot of money. That's a lot of zeros, right? And when you talk about that kind of money, if we were an economy, a national economy, we would be in the top 11 economies on earth. It would seem to me that if we could just make a decision amongst ourselves, which I know is not as easy as it is to say, but if we could make a decision amongst ourselves to stop looking for other people to do for us and just invest in ourselves, make sure that all of our children have African adult that is around them almost all the time. That you have almost no, as a child, you have almost no completely unsupervised time. When I say supervised, I don't mean somebody holding your hand. It's somebody who's in the area that you're in. So when something happens, there's somebody to intervene, right? If we could keep us around caring adults all the time, we would get wired into thinking that being safe as a child is normal. I think that we think being safe as a child is abnormal in lots of parts of African communities around the country. Does that make sense to you?
Oh, you're absolutely correct. In fact, I would argue that in the post-Dr. King assassination era, these 49 years or so, because we'll be celebrating 50 years this coming April 4th, 49 years since the assassination of Dr. King has been the period of the normalization of dysfunction in Black America. We have normalized dysfunction. Police genocide is now normal. Teenage pregnancy is normal. Only 1 out of every 4 black boys graduating from high school is normal. White Jesus still in our black churches is normal. We have normalized the dysfunction of our community.
Yep. Dr. Johnson, we have Patricia Elliott. You just have to kind of.
Can you hear me?
Well, I don't know if you can hear on your set. We have Patricia Elliott, who is the assistant director of our Better Schools, Better Neighborhoods initiative, who's joined us in the studio. She's the one that sort of found you for us, so we wanted to give her an opportunity to talk. What our Better Schools, Better Neighborhoods initiative is about is exactly what you were talking about. How do we marshal the resources of ourselves to help us do the one thing you know you can win on if you do it right? If you get your kids through the education process where they come out on the other side able to go into a conferring or a vocation certification program without requiring remediation, you spent your 13 years of education of your child wisely. If you don't get that done, you might as well just throw that money in the wind, right? And so we try to work on the how do we help the community to get better so that we can help us educate our kids better so that we can grow a better pie for all of us. So, Patricia, can you speak up? Can you
try. Can you hear me?
I can hear your voice, but I can't.
You're kind of far.
Yeah, my headphones aren't working.
Try this one over here and see if you can hear her now.
Can you hear me?
Still can't hear? Try, yeah, you guys sort of switch around your mics. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good morning. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning.
Excellent. I can barely hear. I can't even hear or anything.
That's okay.
Okay. Well, I want to say good morning. Thank you very much for coming on. This is a heavy topic of discussion. Our children are at stake here. What's going on in our education system with the way things were created to bring our children down? I mean, children being placed in special education, the district suggesting to parents that your child needs special education, and you know as a mother your child doesn't. That's the conversation I can bring, because they tried to tell me that about my daughter. And it's just not true. It's just not true.
You know, Dr. Johnson, you raised a point it wasn't in the book, or it might have been in the book. I don't know if I saw it there or if I saw it in one of the articles that I read on some of the speeches that you have given. But help me understand if what I'm thinking makes sense. I get the understanding that if a child is placed in special education, the district gets about twice as much money for that child than they would get for a child who was not in special education. And that, now this may just be the cynical person in me, so if I'm wrong, you could tell me, I can take it, right? But the impression I get is that districts are putting kids into special education unnecessarily because there's sort of superficial things that are going on that allow them to be able to mark that child for special education. The district then gets, twice as much money for those kids, then provides low budget kind of services, special ed services, because the kids don't really need that much service. And then they take the surplus and use that to flush out their general fund and, balance their books. Now, that sounds like a very cynical way of looking at the world, but I got to ask you, Dr. Umar, am I making sense, or is this just the cynical nature in me?
It's not cynical. It's truthful. It's truthful. I mean, I've been a school psychologist going on 20 years here, 17 plus 3 years of study. That's exactly what's going on, and I've seen it from the East Coast to the West to the Midwest to the South. Special education is a business. And it thrives off of the marketing job that school districts do so well, selling those dysfunctional services to black parents. I mean, let's just think about it. And this is one of the reasons I'm coming back to Buffalo, New York on Saturday, September the 9th. And I'm really hoping that the community comes out to get this information, because the last time I was in town, which was only one previous time, 2 years ago, at the Frank Meriwether Library, everyone couldn't fit inside because of the space. So
there's a mother load of people out here that are concerned about this, right?
Exactly. So this, September 9th, we want all the parents to come out. We want all the children to come out. We want the elders, the activists, the politicians, the preachers. We want them all to come out. But if I'm a parent and I'm uneducated about special ed law, I'm uneducated about special ed process, if a teacher, counselor, nurse, principal, psychologist, reading specialist comes to me and say, your son is struggling, but we have a program to help him. And if you put him in this program, it limits the amount of days we can suspend him from school. It limits our ability to retain him from moving up in grade. It gives him a smaller class size. It gives him a slower pace of instruction. It gives him more time to take his tests. The way they market special ed to black parents makes it seem like it is a blessing, when in all reality it is a curse. And I call it that because it is the central pipe in the school-to-prison pipeline. You couldn't have a school-to-prison pipeline without special ed.
There you go.
Here's the fact that everyone needs to wrap their minds around. The average reading level of an African-American male inmate in America's prisons and jails is 3rd grade. Third. The average grade at which a black child is referred for special ed is also the 3rd grade. Special ed has been kept concealed as the chief conspirator towards the school-to-prison pipeline.
Now, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that's the grade that my daughter was said to have been ready for special education. And for me, I said to them, okay, I was a younger mother. This is my 30-year-old daughter now. When she was a child, they recommended her to special education. They put her on medication, something called Silert, and they're telling me that this is, I went to an IEP meeting, and they're telling me this is what was best for my child. Now, I'm a young mother. I'm married, but I'm a young mother. And I'm looking at these people, and I'm saying, okay. So I go for it. And I let them give my daughter this medication, and when I saw what the medication was doing to my child, she had all kinds of nervous tics. She could not function properly. She was angrier than
drugs.
ever.
Right.
And I took her off the medicine. I said, you know what, this is done. I told my daughter, I said, baby, you all right. You're no longer sick. You don't need this medicine anymore. And I took her off.
So I need for Dr. Johnson to help people understand. I had a girl in 1990 who was in one of my preschool programs at Erie Community College. And I couldn't even test her. She was so slow, I couldn't even test her orally on the California Achievement Test. She just couldn't respond to the test. It was clear that there was something there was like a resistance in her. It wasn't that she didn't have the innate intelligence to learn, but she didn't have the ability to handle being tested. Something, it's like almost like hormones, erupted inside of her, or something like that. But anyway, when I got her, she was 18 years old. They had given her what she thought was a high school diploma. Please don't laugh about this, right?
This is a problem.
She got one of those leather, Doctor, you've seen these things, these leather books, and it says, it's got like a sheepskin in it, and it has like a seal for your local school district on it. But if you read it, the word graduation does not exist on the document at all.
Certificate of attendance.
It was really a certificate of attendance, right? And when I had to take this child, it took me almost 2 years from being untestable. I actually had to hire somebody for 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, for 2 years to get her to the point where she could read it better than a 7th grade level and count at a 6th grade level, which was like miraculous. She's still working for the HSBC bank, right now. And it was only because we were able to do that, and I had the authority, at ECC to be able to move those kind of dollars for this single child, because you couldn't teach her in a group session. She just couldn't respond to that. But I say that to say that even the children who test where they may appear to be retarded in the test often are not really retarded. There's something inside the child that reacts to what you're doing to them when you're testing them. And so they just don't respond to the test. But it's not like the child doesn't have there's intellectual stuff going on in the child's head. The child's just not giving it to you. Am I on something there, Dr. Johnson?
Oh, yeah, absolutely correct. Testing in and of itself is an issue because, first of all, it is based upon an erroneous philosophy that you can reduce the quality and quantity of a child's learning to a number. It's just like the fallacy of the intelligence quotient. If you're giving out an IQ test, it's based on the assumption that you can quantify a qualitative subject. You cannot reduce to one number the brilliance and intelligence and the complexity of a child's intellect and take all of that and reduce it down to a single score. But this is what white folks do. They love to quantify things that cannot be quantified. But the reason it's done is because in a society based on racial privilege and in a society based on class structure, you have to justify why the rich are rich and you have to justify why the poor are poor. So this goes back to the early eugenicidal foundations of American social belief in practice, which is to say that they justify why the top 1% of Americans own more than half of the wealth of the entire country by saying they were more intelligent, they were more brilliant, they excelled better in school. And when you look at the poor, especially black folk, they will say, well, they're intellectually, backwards, they're half monkey, they're not as intelligent as white children. So to make a long story short, testing in the 21st century serves the same function as the Jim Crow sign did in the 20th century.
Yep.
And that is to say that testing is the new way of denying opportunity to black people without saying it's because you're black. You just simply say you didn't score high enough.
That's right.
This is how they keep us out of the fire department.
Make it a
This is how they keep us
meritocracy.
out of civil service jobs. This is how they keep our children out of prestigious universities. The test score is the new Jim Crow sign. Instead of letters, they use numbers now.
Yeah. Dr. Johnson, I want you to hang right on. We're going to have to take a moment and take care of our sponsors because they pay for the program. So if you all just stick with us, we will see this out of the break here at Living right now.
Wow.
What?
I think he's still on. Is he still on?
No, he said he could keep him on.
Okay, cool.
So how's it going so far?
What yeah, we're getting to it. We're getting to it. We still don't know whether he's a doctor or not, but we're getting it. Never mind.
I hear what you said.
He's such a smart aleck, you know.
You starting already this morning?
Who, me?
Jared said you starting already.
See, that's how he roll, you know. See, he says smart aleck stuff and don't even know he said it, you know. Uh-oh, did he? Okay, we have a caller.
It's the Home Improvement Resource Program, restoring value to neighborhoods across Erie County. This is Doyle 129. Brought to you by the Community Action Organization of Erie County.
All right, welcome back to Living Now here at WFO 96.5 FM on your dial. And we're here, we're having a remote, I guess, whatever you call it, interview with Dr. Umar Johnson, who is the author of Academic Holocaust, and is really championing us grappling with the reality that our children are under attack, particularly our African male children are under attack, and that this is a systemic situation that is going on, and we're going to have to respond to it in a very systemic way. So, Dr. Johnson, we have Eva Doyle, who is a longtime educator. She was an educator for about 34 years. She's been retired for about 8 or 9 years, but she's not really retired because she's been teaching in the community ever since then, and she's working on her PhD right now. So I want to get her thoughts and your thoughts to her thoughts. Mother Doyle, are you there?
Yes. I'm calling to say hello to Dr. Johnson.
How you doing, Queen Mother? Glad to hear your voice.
Listen, when he came to Buffalo 2 years ago, I hosted him at the Meriwether Library.
He was talking about that.
Yes, and listen, he calls me Mother Doyle also.
There you go.
Dr. Johnson, it's so good to hear your voice. I don't have anything to say except I want to correct one thing. I've been retired 13 years, going on 14 years. And I want to say this. I when I taught in the schools, I very seldom referred children to special ed because I knew what was going to happen. There were so many teachers who were so lazy, who didn't want to challenge our children and teach them the correct way. But I don't want to take up, I'm going to be there at the church to listen to you. I'm going to cover you for the Criterion. I just wanted to say hello and welcome back to Buffalo.
Queen Mother. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to seeing you as well.
Excellent. Dr. Johnson, this whole issue of IQ tests, I found that to be very intriguing because I took an IQ test when I was maybe 7 years old, and they said like I had 140, IQ, and took another one, about 6 or 7 years after that, said like I had 147, 148 IQ, and so on. I didn't understand what that meant in the context of me learning. I had people that were better at chemistry than me, they weren't as good at trigonometry, but they were better at chemistry than me. I didn't see what the connection was between what these tests were and what I was actually doing in school. And I wonder if what you were saying seems to me to explain that what they do is they create something that sort of makes a fake meritocracy out of academics. You know what I mean? If you perform well on the test, you earn the right to be treated correctly in the education system. And if you don't perform well on a test, it's because of you. There's something wrong with you, and that's why we're not going to give you the quality education that we're going to give to other people. I hope that that's not what's going on, but that's my sense of what is taking place. Am I on the money on that?
Oh, you're absolutely on the money. Instead of looking at the test and saying, why is it that African American children categorically and systematically score lower than white children, let's look at this test and see why an entire race of children are doing less well than another race. Instead of saying, let's look at the test, they say, no, we're going to blame the children. But what I want to add to the conversation is that 15-point test gap over which so many conversations and panels and debates and discussions have been had was deliberately created. That was not an accident of testing. The test was created, again, to justify the racial hierarchy, to justify white privilege. We need to understand something really, really well here. If black children categorically outscore white children, let's just say for the rest of 2017, black children are showing that they are 10 to 15 points smarter than white children. America has a major problem on its hands. Why? Because if black children are more intelligent than white children, how do we justify so many of them in prison? How do we justify that you only have one black working on a doctorate at this university, another black in law school, only 2 of them in med school, only a couple in the engineering program? How do you keep Harvard all white? How do you keep Yale all white? How do you keep the University of Pennsylvania most prestigious elite academic graduate programs? How can you keep them all white when the black children are clearly more intelligent than the white children? They can't have that, which means the test must always produce a false positive suggesting that whites are more intelligent, because that's the only way you can protect and maintain the American racial hierarchy as it is today. Once black children outscore white children, it will cause a social revolution. And because of that, I can promise you, you will never see a test that shows black children outscoring white children. You will never see it. Because the minute black kids exceed white kids on any test, that test is destroyed and a new one is replaced.
Yeah. Dr. Johnson, I want to kind of spin us in a slightly different direction, because I think that some of what we're talking about is sort of systemically deliberate, and some of what we're talking about is maybe quasi-deliberate, but it's almost like an unintended but real consequence. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. I was doing some analysis on who actually teaches us at the elementary and high school level. And at the numbers I looked at for the year that ended, school year that ended for 2013, was that almost 82% of all of the teachers in the public school system, elementary and high school, were Caucasian teachers. And even some of those Hispanic teachers are actually Caucasian teachers that just happen to speak Spanish. I don't know, some people don't know that speaking another language is not the same thing as being a different race. But that's another conversation. That's too hard for us to work our way through. But my point is that 76% in that analysis of all teachers were women, and 82% at minimum of those women were Caucasian women. So that means better than 60% of the people who are teaching our kids are Caucasian women. Now, we've gone through this civil rights revolution in which the primary beneficiaries of the civil rights revolution have been Caucasian women, not African people, even though it was supposedly a struggle for African people's rights. It's Caucasian women who seem to have benefited the most by that. And a culture, I think, has formed among women that is manifested in the women that teach in the school systems, where the male children are looked at as perpetrators and the female children are looked at as the victims or future victims of the perpetrators. And that gets into how things are talked about. Female children are being encouraged to go into, math and science and non-traditional this and that. And the boy children are treated as if, well, y'all always been there, so we don't have to do anything, to help you. That's not a very scientific way that I express that, but does that make sense, the thought process that I just provided there?
Oh, it most certainly does. And I think obviously, because white females are a protected class in the United States. And because they are a protected class in the United States, we seldom have open, honest conversations about the role of racism in education. 9 out of every 10 articles, news specials, interviews, or books operates from the premise that there's something wrong with the child in the family, and that's why black children are struggling. Because they are a protected class, white women have never, nor will they ever, be held responsible for their role, and in particular, their racist attitudes and how that affects the outcomes of black children, even though university research coming from America's most prestigious universities clearly shows that there is racial bias in the classroom. And it clearly has demonstrated consistently over the years that a child's academic output and their quality of growth is directly a result of the faith and the quality of instruction and the attitude that were projected to them about themselves by their white teachers. Mm-hmm. And I would say that one of the greatest conspiracies and oversights of the civil rights and affirmative action movement has been the fact that neither the Civil Rights Bill nor the efforts of affirmative action, which we know has benefited gays and white women more than it has ever benefited black folk, but yet and still never sought to eliminate the racial bias in teaching employment in predominantly black school districts. I mean, how can you talk about eliminating discrimination in public accommodations and services? I mean, you went to the military and you did it there. You went to the Greyhound buses and you did it there. You went to the hotels and did it there. You went to city government and you did it there. But they never brought those types of promises into the school system. When they integrated our children beginning in 1954, they left the teachers behind, and no one has ever dealt with that.
And you know, that's so interesting because it brings to mind a paradigm that was taught to me by James Foreman, the author of the Black Manifesto. He taught me this back in 1970. He said, be careful who you ally yourself with. Because sometimes the people who seem like they're on your side, they have their own issues, their own agenda. And you end up having to carry their agenda as baggage, behind you as you're trying to move forward. So you have Caucasian women who obviously have been discriminated against and marginalized in many ways, even though they were half the custodians of the wealth, of Caucasian people. They were marginalized in many ways. They weren't allowed to vote until whatever it was, 1920, 21, whatever it was, 1916.
Marginalized but never dehumanized.
Marginalized,
right. But never dehumanized.
Right. But we wind up carrying. They were wound up, being a part of the ideation of what the civil rights movement was all about, and because they were so able and had large numbers and they had access to everything because they were married to everything. They were able, fairly quickly to get a lot of momentum going their way, and we were less likely to react against them because they were supposedly more positively oriented towards the African civil rights movement. And so we ended up, not looking at these people that we thought were our allies. Maybe they weren't really our allies after all. I'm just positing that out there for you, Dr. Johnson. Sometimes I hate, saying this stuff because it sounds like I'm so cynical about things. I'm just trying to help us to understand that there are dynamics that are going on here that Dr. Johnson is trying to point out to us, that we have to grasp in our heads why these things are so important. I'm not mad at somebody else. I understand they're fighting for their own interests, but I got to fight for my own interest, okay? I can't not fight for mine because I'm trying to protect yours.
Yes.
Dr. Johnson, help me. Pull me out of the basket that I'm putting myself in.
I absolutely follow you on that. I think one of the ironies of the black struggle as it relates to education or any other aspect of our reality is that whenever you do put the issue of race on the table as a serious catalyst for many of the problems that African people face here in the United States and throughout the Western Hemisphere, you will get black people who voluntarily, without training, license, or degree, will stand up and defend white people without even being asked to do it. And so one of the things that we're going to have to deal with going forward is how do we neutralize that element within our own community, which is hell-bent on protecting racism as a way of protecting the crumb that it has received from the table of racism. In other words, there's no scholar in America, in his heart or her heart, who doesn't absolutely know that black people are never going to get equality in this country unless they're willing to pay the price for that. Okay? They know this. But yet and still they would argue that marching and protesting and voting and praying will change things. They know it's not the truth, but it protects whatever benefits they have gained. It protects their job. It protects their retirement. It protects their child attending a privileged, prestigious white school. It protects whatever monies that they're contractually obligated to receive from the power structure. So a lot of us, out of our own selfishness and out of our own greed and narrow-mindedness, we will defend racism, not because we believe what racism says, but because it protects our own estate.
Yep. Trish, you had something you wanted to plug in there?
Yes, I've been wanting to plug it for a minute. I'm a mother, and I'm just going to represent black mothers just sitting here. I'm just typical black mother, single, working one job, and raising children. And we have to deal with the teachers in the school as it relates to our children. You know, when our children are so-called misbehaving or not getting it or having these issues, and these teachers are recommending that our children be sent to special education, or being told that our children is bad, or being told that something is wrong with our children, we, black mothers, have to deal with these white teachers, white people in charge of our children. We have to co-parent, not co-parent, but co-educate our children. If you are educating my child and you don't have a care in your heart for my child, you're just here doing a 6-7 hour stint, you know, you don't take my child home with you. And so when I'm trying to I'm trying to say this, black women are the most endangered group in the world, what I'm saying is. So when we complain or when we talk about our issues to the teacher who we're trying to have a connection with for our child, they don't really recognize our situation. They say, well, you should have, but they're basing that on their socialization, where they're coming from. They don't live in our community. They don't shop in our community. They don't work in our community. And our children engage them only from this point to that point. So how can you decide for me that my child has a problem or there are problems with my child? And how can you decide that for me? I'm sitting here wanting to fight right now.
So I want you to turn this around for Dr. Johnson. And given that reality, okay, you know, your children are literally in enemy territory when they're in these public schools and so on. But you can't change that reality. They're going to be sent, and you're going to send them into enemy territory every single school day. So given that, what should parents and the community itself be doing to blunt this so that we can make this? You know, my first wife used to always say, you know, take lemons and turn them into lemonade. How do you turn this into lemonade?
Well, for me...
Well, one of the...
I'm
sorry. One of the things that I'm going to be discussing when I do come to Buffalo on September 9th at the St. Luke AME Zion Church, I'm going to be talking about an organization I started a year ago now. We're a little more than a year old. The National Independent Black Parent Association. And actually our next training conference will be in North Carolina on the 15th and 16th. So I'm hoping I can motivate some of the brothers and sisters in Buffalo, New York to join me in Durham, North Carolina to get the necessary training from me that allows them to go back home and operate that chapter. Because one thing we have to do, we have to organize. I can't tell you how many times I've been involved in assisting parents and advocating for children where only to find out after dealing with one situation, there were 4, 5, 6, 7 other parents in the same school with the exact same situation, and in many cases were in the same classroom as this parent's child. And it bothers me because what it says is we're not organized. There's nothing more powerful than to walk into a principal's office and say we have an issue of white teachers singling out black boys for punishment. If I say that for only one black boy, the teacher and the principal and the assistant superintendent is going to automatically say you're making an assumption We don't have this problem with other black children. We only have it with her son. So this ain't about race, it's about him. But when I come into the classroom and there's 4 or 5 parents who are all saying the same thing is happening, it is no longer about individualism, and we now have to address the issue from a systematic, institutional perspective. And that adds to our power to leverage that situation. So we got to organize. Stokely Carmichael said it the best. If you organize a little, you get a little done. If you organize some, you get something done. But if you don't organize at all, you don't get anything done. And I would say, as Marcus Garvey said 100 years ago, the greatest weapon used against the Negro is disorganization. Any problem we have is multiplied tenfold by the fact that everyone dealing with that same problem is not operating in a system of oneness and unification.
Listen, I don't know if I had given the number before to the program, so we usually get a few more callers calling in. The number again is 837-1112. That's 837-1112. Trish, you had something you were about to plug in there?
I was just going to say that, Dr. Johnson, you said it, white women are protected. They're protected. This position as being a teacher is a protected position. Black women who are raising their sons, we're not protected. We're out here fighting on our own in a lot of ways. And even I've read somewhere recently that when you see black people struggling, white people don't really recognize it as a struggle. Well, that's not that. They don't have a real first-hand understanding. It's just theory for them. But they're making decisions and making laws and putting in injustices or whatever you want to call it against our babies. How can we work with that? I say parents, mothers, you know your children. Don't let anybody tell you something's going on with your child without you talking to your child first and understanding your child. That's what I have to say. We have to listen to our children as mothers.
Dr. Johnson?
I absolutely agree with that point. Now, you asked a minute ago, what are some things parents can do on an individual level? Obviously, we need to operate on the group level, but what they can do on the individual level, 3 quick things. Number 1, don't sign anything unless you read it thoroughly and understand it. Now, that makes a lot of sense, but guess what? Most parents do not read things thoroughly, and they still sign them even when they don't understand them. And the reason they do this is we love to give the schools the benefit of the doubt. We love to give the teachers the benefit of the doubt. One of the reasons we got so many black children in special ed, even though we didn't think nothing was wrong with our children, because somebody who doesn't even live with us told us that they need special ed, we went ahead and agreed, giving them, once again, the benefit of the doubt. You cannot afford to give the school the benefit of the doubt. The school plays a central role in the maintenance and perpetuation of white supremacy because it prepares black children to fail. It prepares black children for that position that the American social order has already predetermined they should obtain. Number 2, a parent has to get comfortable saying no. I've noticed in my work that black parents, mothers and fathers, are very uncomfortable saying no to white people. And I don't think there's anything special about the school system. I think this goes back to 4 centuries of indoctrination when we were absolutely made to feel that we were inferior and that the white man is superior, and anything that emanates from his or her mouth is the gospel truth. So we don't feel comfortable rejecting the advances of white people. Learn how to say no in defense of your child. And then the third thing that black parents need to start doing, let me say stop doing, and that is going to school meetings by themselves. They need to start going to school meetings with someone else, because schools are bullies. I know. I work in them. Schools will bully you just like a gangster would. They like to get the single black mother coming in there by herself. So the principal and the vice principal and the dean of students and the classroom teacher and the reading specialist can gang up on her. And because they're white and have more college degrees than she has more often than not, she once again gives them the benefit of the doubt. Never, ever go to a school meeting by yourself. Bring 2, 3, 4, 5 other people with you. Bring relatives. Let them know that we are a family. Nothing worse than a single black mother who shows up either telling them outright or evidencing through her behavior that she don't have any support. A single black mother without support, her kids are destined for a life of special ed and low expectations.
So I want to put a scale on this problem. I want to numerically. Okay, I know we were talking about numbers a minute ago, but I want to scale this for us. Roughly 16 to 17% of all children in the public school systems in the United States are black children, right? when we look at the number of children who are in children who are identified as having what they refer to as an educable mental retardation. Don't get mad at the word. That's the word that they use, the clinical word, mental retardation. 37% of all of the kids who are identified as having an educable mental retardation, meaning that you could teach them in a regular classroom, are African children. 37%. We're only 16 to 17% of the student population, 37% in that category. In the category of children with trainable, trainable as opposed to educable, trainable mental retardation, like you see with the kids at Goodwill and whatnot, right? That you can teach them how to pull the carts and whatnot, you know, at Wegmans. Stop laughing, okay? 27% of those children who are identified as trainable with a trainable mental retardation are black, and 27% of the children who are identified as having serious emotional disturbance, 27% of them are black, in a population in which only 16 to 17% of the total population is black. I just want you to understand the scaling of this problem. This is not just people saying stuff because they superficially, you know, see things, you know, in the classroom. This is their numbers. These are not Nate's numbers. This is from the National Center for Education Statistics. This is not Nate's numbers, okay? So Dr. Johnson, we have a caller hanging on. Hold on one second. Bring that call in.
Sure.
Hi, caller. Are you there?
Yeah, yes, sir. Blessed love, family.
Hey, brother, come on. All right.
A couple of quick questions.
Sure.
They have a lot of nice sounding kind of terms and phrases and models and mission statements. Like the mission statement of the Board of Education is putting students and families first to ensure high academic achievement for all. They have something in here in New York State called the Dignity for All Students Act. My question is, if not special education, should we have specialized education? Because not all students learn the same way, and we need to teach the way students learn if students aren't learning the way they teach. So how can we take control over the development and education of our own people?
Good question. Dr. Johnson?
My answer to that would be no other aspect of education is more important than the personnel. We can focus on learning styles, we can focus on teaching methods, we can focus on the pedagogy, we can deal with the instruction. It will not matter because the person teaching the child doesn't care about them. In other words, you guys know I'm in the process of building the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy. Imagine I got two teachers for the same position. One of them has all of the degrees. Other one is fresh out of college, very little experience. But she is absolutely optimistic about her ability to impact them children. Guess who I'm going to go with? I'm going to go with the one with the heart. Because as we know, and the research shows us, it is the teacher's belief in the child's ability to learn, which is the single most important predictor of classroom achievement, not the pedagogy, not whether or not they're teaching black history. You understand? Not the instructional methods, not specialized learning. Her faith in the child. The tree will only grow if it's nurtured with faith. Just as in church, the same thing in school. If there is no faith in those children's ability to achieve at a high level, they won't. So more than the paperwork, it is the personnel. If I got to choose between great teachers and a lousy curriculum, or a great curriculum and lousy teachers, give me the great teachers and the lousy curriculum. Why? Because despite the curriculum, a great teacher who has faith in her students is going to make sure they learn irregardless of what's on paper. The personnel matters more than anything in print.
That was revealed in the research of Leon Pettigrew, who wrote an analysis on the Coleman Report. And what he said was that if you go to, you could find in the South those one-room schoolhouses where you had 9 classrooms, 9 grades being taught in one room. And those kids were graduating, getting through school, going on to secondary school, and going on to college in spite of the lack of resources because of the passionate commitment that the teachers had for those children. So it wasn't about, whether or not you had the best, chemistry labs and, swimming pools and a nice track, on campus and whatnot. It was about the teachers. If the teachers really wanted it, and the principal was really the education leader of those children, people become what they hear. And if you're the important person in somebody's life and you're the one that's constantly, helping people to understand what they can be, they will turn into what you are directing them to turn into. And if that's not where you're coming from, the kids will turn into people who are not, turning into what you say you want them to turn into. I think that's the answer to Kamal's question, Dr. Johnson. I think you're right on the money on that.
And I would also add that we need to be clear that although we appreciate it, and I largely support the Adam Clayton Powell, Charles Hammond Houston's NAACP Legal Defense Fund's victory in the May 17, 1954 Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court decision. But we need to also be conscious that there were educators and scholars who did not agree with the need to integrate the schools or desegregate the black schools. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of blacks who opposed it. W.E.B. Du Bois opposed it. Zora Neale Hurston opposed it. A lot of prominent blacks opposed it. They didn't see it as necessary, and they thought that it would lead to ultimately detrimental outcomes, as we can plainly see. And one of the reasons that they desegregated them schools had nothing to do with giving black children equal access to a quality education. They were afraid at the type of inventions and achievements that black people were accomplishing in those underfunded, dilapidated one-school public housing. I mean, do you realize we invented the gas mask and the stoplight? 2/3 of our inventions came before we could sit next to white children. And so America was threatened at the intellectual achievement of black children, and they desegregated the schools so that they could supervise the learning, dumb it down, and also draft those black students who they could use to help maintain white supremacy over African people, i.e. Barack Obama, i.e. Colin Powell. So they never integrated the schools to help us. They integrated the schools to help them control us.
That's true. I think we have a caller hanging on here. Let me see if I can grab that call real quick. Hi, caller, are you there?
Good morning, Nathan. How are you?
Hey, Bob.
Quick couple of points. Was going to ask the doctor what he thought about things like arsenic, lead, mercury, over-vaccinations, if that's playing a part of what's going on. And moreover, I think it's the system itself. I told you that part of my family had to move into a new school system to get the type of education that they were looking for. And I will say something. I told you that I was once told teacher gets paid whether I learn or not. So it was up to me to receive the education. But I think it's more of what the doctor says. It's the dumbing down of America. And Nathan, you said something in the beginning of the program about wrapping your mind around something. I'll just say to you, my friend, is try wrapping your mind around the sun and see how big that truly is. God bless you, my friend. I'll listen and talk to you later.
Okay, I'm not going to wrap my mind around the sun. I'm going to stick right down here. Go ahead, Dr. Johnson.
Well, he's absolutely correct. I definitely believe that, well, we know, statistically we even know, and now we, from the Food and Drug Administration a couple of months ago, they finally admitted, although they didn't fully admit, but they admit that certain immunizations have been related to an incidence in autism. They didn't say all immunizations, when the truth of the matter is the whistleblowers, former researchers from the FDA, have confirmed that almost all, at least multiple, immunizations actually trigger autism. But we do at least have an admission that at least one or some immunizations trigger autism. If you go back, okay, I'm 40 years old. I went through my entire grade school education without a single autistic classmate. I'm sure the same is true for you all and for most of your listeners.
When I was going to school, there was no such thing as autism.
Exactly. But the children today, the average black child gets at least one autistic classmate every single year. And that is because of the immunizations. They are more toxic than ever before. So, of course, someone would ask the question, if the immunizations are leading to autism, why stop giving them out? Well, there's two reasons for that. One has to do with capitalism, and the other has to do with accountability. The reason why they cannot stop the immunizations is because if they admit in court that these immunizations are primarily responsible for the rapid rise of autism, you have a situation where nearly every parent in America could sue the government for knowingly subjecting their children, okay, to chemicals that clearly cause harm. That is a clear violation of the 14th Amendment, equal protection, okay, not to mention other aspects of the Constitution, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. So that is a legal nightmare for the United States government. The only payout that would be greater than a class action payout to the parents of autistic and thought to be autistic children would be reparations for enslavement of African people. And the second reason why they will never admit that immunizations cause autism is because it's a billion-dollar industry. I mean, you're actually selling to the government a chemical that every child born in this country, black, white, Latino, Arab, East Indian, whatever of their racial background, if they're born in this country, except the parents who are smart enough to fight back, they will get this. Do you know how much money that is? You don't even have to market the product. It's guaranteed because it's being forced down parents' throats by the government. Yeah. So greed and accountability is the reason why this monster called immunizations will never stop. And on top of that, there's no long-term evidence, no long-term conclusive evidence that shows children who are immunized are healthier than children who are not over their lifetime.
Dr. Johnson, I want to get one more call in before the end of this hour. Let me get that call real quick. Hi, caller, are you there?
Good morning, Nate. How you doing?
All right. How are you doing?
Okay. I just want to just say I'm glad to hear this doctor speaking about what I knew when I became an administrator in 1991. The Buffalo Schools is aware of learning styles and effect of medication on the kids and so forth. And so we're dealing with the different generation of parents. And thank God for you for having this brother on the air to deal with this new generation of parents, to let them realize the racism aspect is still going on in this day and time. God bless you.
All right, thank you. And Dr. Johnson, let's tell people again, we're going to be at St. Luke's AME Zion Church. This is going to be on September 9th. What time is that going to be?
4 p.m. Doors open up at 2 p.m. The address again, St. Luke AME Zion, 314 East Ferry Street, Ferry. All children 17 and younger, all children 17 and younger are absolutely free. All elders 65 years of age and older, absolutely free. They don't need a ticket. They just need to have ID confirming that they're 65 and older. Everyone between the age of 18 and 64 will need to get tickets, and they can do so through my website, drumarjohnson.com, or they can go directly to Prince of Pan-Africanism, and we spell Africa with a K, princeofpanafricanism.eventbrite.com. They can also text my phone for the flyer or the link, 215-989-9858. I repeat, 215-989-9858.
Excellent, excellent. And if you don't know where St. Luke's is, okay, that means you probably don't live in the African part of Buffalo, because we all know St. Luke's, okay? But if you don't remember, near Lons, right in the corner of Lonsdale and East Ferry, that's a block off of Jefferson Avenue. We have one more caller sneaking in here in the last hour. All right, caller, how are you doing out there?
Yes, greetings, fam. Everything is well. How are you all?
Doing great. How you doing, Jomo?
I'm well. Just a quick comment. August 17th, Marcus Garvey's birthday, 130th anniversary. Dr. Johnson, I know you know, yesterday in Jamaica they had a very large Marcus Garvey celebration. You were there a year ago. Can you talk to us on this last few minutes about the importance of us recognizing our own power and taking things into our own control and removing it from them to us, or I, where it's us, our creator, our destiny, and removing it from other people's hands? Just talk to us about that with education and creating our own schools and things of that nature.
Okay.
Indeed, I would argue that most of what we suffer from is profoundly psychological. You know, one of the reasons why we continue to walk in this quicksand and take one step forward, 3 steps backwards is because we fail to realize that the issue is not resources, it's not education, it's not numbers. The only resource we're lacking in is in the psychological resources, the courage, the commitment, the consistency, the accountability, the compassion, the camaraderie. It's all in the psychological. That's where we're losing. You know, Dr. Carter G. Woodson, Miseducation of the Negro, he talked about it. You know, if you control a man's thinking, you don't have to determine whether he goes to the back door or not. He'll go to the back door on his own. And when he gets to the back of the door, if there is one, he will make his own to walk out of it. And of course, the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey said, without confidence in yourself, you are twice defeated in the race of life. With confidence, you have won even before you have started. And that's why I believe the road back to redemption begins with the 2 E's, education and economics.
Economics, absolutely. So listen, we only got about 26 seconds left, not even quite that. We're talking about Dr. Johnson is going to be in Buffalo at St. Luke's AME Zion Church. It's going to be at 4 o'clock, 314 East Ferry Street. All children under age 18 and all adults over 65 can come in for free. Everyone else, I don't know what the price is for $25 for adults. For those in between, we're hoping to see hundreds of us there. That's why we went to this venue rather than going to the library, because we needed to have enough space for all of the people that ought to be coming to help us to focus on this issue. This is the number one threat facing us right now. We are losing generation after generation after generation, and they're getting more and more successful in assassinating these generations. And so we have to fight. We have to fight now. We have to fight with urgency. Dr. Johnson, I really appreciate all of the work that you do and all of the insight that you shared. I know you got a lot more you're going to share with us when you're in Buffalo.
Oh, without question, looking forward to it. Again, thanks to Sister Patricia for helping to get the word out.
Thank you,
thanks
Dr.
to you, my brother, for having me back on the show. I want to give you all greetings from your brothers and sisters down here in Nat Turner land. I'm in Druryville, Virginia. As you know, today is the 186th anniversary of the Nat Turner War. It's also the anniversary of the Haitian Revolution. It is also the anniversary of the George Jackson Prison War. And the anniversary of my birth. So in just a few short moments, I'm going to be heading over to the very land where Nat Turner waged the bloodiest slave revolt in American history. And we will be observing the total solar eclipse together as we remember the great ancestor Nat Turner and his army.
They're kicking me out. We'll talk to you soon, Dr. Johnson.
Yes, sir. Take care, my brother.
Bye-bye.
Peace and love.
Thank you for listening to today's program on Living Now with L. Nathan Hare. If you would like to share your questions and comments or would like a copy of today's show, please send your emails to livingnow@lnathanhare.com or send us a fax at 881-2927. We'll be back next week with another inspirational program on Living Now.